You're listening to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, episode 5.
The goal is to have $1 billion assets under management in 6 years.
Welcome to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast with Jacob Ayers, providing actionable content to help you along your journey to financial freedom through real estate investing. As the premier asset class, real estate has helped ordinary people just like you amass fortunes. The benefits of passive income from real estate investing will allow you to live a life you want. And now your host, entrepreneur, real estate investor, and apartment deal syndicator, Jacob Ayers.
Hi and welcome. Today we're going to be discussing the power of partnerships with Joe Fairless. Joe is a full-time real estate investor that started buying multifamily properties in 2013 and now controls over $135 million worth of real estate in Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, and Cincinnati. As a native Texan, Joe grew up in Fort Worth and graduated from Texas Tech University. He currently lives in Cincinnati and has been investing in real estate since 2008. Prior to that, he was the youngest vice president at an award-winning advertising agency in New York City. He is also the host of the extremely popular podcast, Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever, where he has interviewed guests such as Barbara Corcoran and Robert Kiyosaki. He's a strong advocate of giving back and serves on the Alumni Advisory Board for Texas Tech University and the Board of Directors for Junior Achievement in Cincinnati. Joe is the author of the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever, Volume 1 and 2, in which all profits are donated to Junior Achievement. Today I welcome Joe.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jacob. Pleased to be here and looking forward to having a conversation with you and your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So Joe, today we're wanting to talk a little bit about the power of partnerships. So could you first kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got started in real estate investing in the first place?
Sure. I am originally from Texas, where you are, and I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. I believe you're in Houston, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. I grew up in Fort Worth. I went to school at Texas Tech University and went straight from Lubbock, Texas, which is a bunch of cows and cotton, to New York City, bunch of buildings and concrete, no sun.
Much different.
Much different. My major was advertising, climbed the corporate ladder. I'm giving you the condensed version. Climbed the corporate ladder relatively quickly, became the youngest vice president of a New York City advertising agency. And I, along the way, started investing in real estate. When I first moved to New York, I did not have any money to invest, and my salary was $30,000, which basically covered 1 month's rent, and then my paychecks did, and then I had maybe like a couple $100 left to live off of after I paid rent. And So I didn't have money to invest, but when I did, as I was climbing the corporate ladder, I ended up reading a bunch of books. One of them is Investing for Dummies, and they talked about the 3 different types of investing: stocks, bonds, real estate, and LLCs. I gravitated towards real estate, and then I bought my first house in October of 2009 in Duncanville, Texas, which is about 15 minutes south of Dallas. I still had my full-time job, and then I ended up buying another house the next year, another next year, and another next year. Had 4 homes. At that time, I became apathetic towards my full-time job. I wanted to do something more, and that's when I learned apartment investing. And after learning it, I ended up putting a deal together, raised over $1 million, bought apartment building, and you said earlier you wanted to focus on partnerships. I think that's a great idea, because what I realize is I'm not good at a lot of things, but I'm good at 1 or 2 things. And the important part of being a successful business owner and entrepreneur is to be able to have some self-reflection on what we are really good at and what we're not good at, or not as good as we need to be in order to achieve at a high level. And that's whenever I partnered up with my current business partner, Frank. We partnered up about 2 years ago, bought our first place in August of 2015. It was a 250 unit. And since then, we have acquired 7 more properties. So we have over 2,000 units, a little under 2,000 units right now. And the value is $130 million.
Wow, that's impressive. So Joe, can we talk a little bit about that transition from, you're buying small single-family homes to transitioning into those apartment communities with an investor, or with a partner, that is. How does that structure of that partnership look like, and how did you go from that transition from those types of properties to the others?
Yeah, the structure is pretty straightforward. There's a general partnership and a limited partnership. The general first off, on my first deal, what I'm telling you right now, there's no way I would have been able to explain this at that time. I was just learning as I went, and I now make sure that every deal is structured appropriately. And so the first deal, we had an operating agreement, and I didn't do it the right way. We did do the PPM and everything, but I tell you how it's supposed to be structured, and that is you've got a general partnership and a limited partnership. The general partnership would be you and anyone else on your team who's putting the deal together, bringing in investors. Limited partnership are the passive investors. You can do you can do many different public offerings or offerings. The 2 most common are 506B as in boy, 506C as in cat. B as in boy is what we do. And that doesn't allow us to publicly advertise the offering. We can only bring in accredited investors who we have a pre-existing relationship with, which is fine because my network's fairly large now. So for the first deal and for any deal thereafter, it is a GP LP, and you give a preferred return to investors. We usually do 8% preferred return. That's the promise to pay them the cash flow from the property first before we get paid. It's not a guarantee return, but it's giving them priority of a return.
Right.
And then we have some sort of split after that, either 70-30, 60-40, whatever it is.
Right, great. So far that's been working out well for you. You've expanded with the same partners?
Yeah, I have. I've same business partner for the last 24 months.
Great. So Joe, can you tell us a little bit about some of your current projects you're working on?
Sure. In addition to the properties, the 8 properties that we have right now, and 2 of them are in your neck of the woods. They're in Houston, and then 6 of them are in Dallas actually. But the 2 projects that I'm working on right now from an acquisition standpoint, one is in Fort Worth, my hometown. So that will be property number 9. We are scheduled to close June 2nd, but probably close a little bit earlier than that. And another one I can't talk a whole lot about because it's not technically under contract. It should be later this afternoon or tomorrow morning, and that is an off-market deal in Dallas.
Okay, great. So you've had a lot of success starting out with apartment communities. Have you had any bad deals that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, absolutely. And mistakes along the way. I do a whole presentation at conferences on 10 mistakes I've made on multifamily syndication. Or actually, I think it's titled 10 Mistakes Multifamily Syndicators Make, and then I made all 10 of them. I made all 10 of them. So I could speak from experience. And here's some mistakes that I made, and this will hopefully prevent your listeners from making the same mistakes, in some case ridiculous mistakes. One of them is on my first deal, not knowing the difference between occupancy and economic occupancy. Occupancy, or otherwise known as physical occupancy, people who are living there. Economic occupancy, people who are living there and paying to live there. That's the most important part. They're actually paying to live there. Yeah, I remember going to the property, and I was talking to the owner, and he said, Joe, we're at 98% occupancy. I was like, oh, it's great. And he's like, yeah, it is. And you know what, Joe, if you want, we can get you to 100% occupancy before we close. Yes, please. Yes, I'd love that.
Right.
Well, they did, and they had 100% people living there, but they had about 70% of the people paying to live there. And his incentive for doing that, he's a shady guy, his incentive for doing so was he was collecting an admin fee. He wasn't collecting a deposit. He was collecting an admin fee at when they moved in while we had it under contract. And that benefits him financially in two ways. Morally, no ways, but financially, two ways. One is that he was able to get a fee that went straight to his income for the property. And then two, when you have a security deposit, that gets transferred to the buyer. Therefore, he would have had to give me a credit at closing. So he was pocketing money, and he was also not having to give me a credit on the back end. And it really was a disadvantage. And those are kind of small potatoes. That's like $150, and missing out on $450, which is significant. But the main reason why it hurt so bad is because he was putting in people who didn't qualify, and because they didn't qualify, they didn't have room to, or they didn't think they had room to negotiate living in an apartment that was actually move-in ready. They were moving people into apartments that were a mess. And so fast forward 3 months, once we close, well, now you've got people who aren't qualified to pay rent, but even if they were, they're living in an apartment that has a lot of maintenance issues. So then eventually what happens is they move out, either they skip or they get evicted, which costs money. And when they move out, even if they don't trash the place, if they leave it as they found it, it's still a $4,000 or $5,000 job, because you've got to get the apartment painted, got to get new carpet, appliances might not be working, might be holes in the wall, might replace doors, all sorts of things. So it's a big mistake. And that is something that everyone should and needs to pay attention to when you are underwriting and doing your due diligence. And here are some specific ways to solve that. And this is what we do on all of our properties now. You do a third-party financial audit of their financials. So you look at their bank statement, you look at their P&L, and you look at their rent roll, and you cross-reference all three to make sure they all match up and see what the variance is. And if we had done that through a third-party financial auditor, then we would have uncovered a significant discrepancy between what was being reported on the P&L versus what was actually being put into the bank account, and that would have been a major red flag.
So that third-party financial audit is something you're doing on all of your deals now, and kind of a lessons learned, huh?
Yeah. We started out doing hiring a third-party company that specializes in it, and they're based out of Dallas, I believe. But now what we do is we have our property management company, who is a third party. We have our property management company comb through the leases, the bank statements, and the P&L and cross-reference and see what the variance is. But you've got to have a team that does this for a living, focused on it, because it's a critical part of the business. It's the income. So some would say that's half the battle for having a successful apartment community.
Right. So obviously the good scenarios have outweighed the bad, but you've come across several learning opportunities, and if you learn from those, kind of overcome them with the help of your team. Which, when we say the power of partnerships, we don't just mean financial partners or investment partners, but the team you've built around yourself as well. Your property management company and those kind of players. Could you talk a little bit about how you've built that team and how they've contributed to your success overall?
Yeah, sure. I mean, got a property management partner. Have they're called, their name is Citygate. They're based in Dallas, Texas. They manage over 8,000 units in primarily the Dallas-Fort Worth area, mainly concentrated in Dallas. I've had bad property management companies, and it can cripple you. It will cripple the property. So it's important to, when you have a 5-star management partner, especially with multifamily, you treat them well and you continue to compensate them well. I mean, ultimately compensate them well. In addition to that, we've got a really good mortgage broker who helps us get the best debt financing terms. And then other than that, I mean, it's my investors and investors who bring the equity to the deals. I invest, and my business partner invests our own money in every single deal, so we have alignment of interest with investors. And it's really about the long-term investor communication with as it relates to the properties. And that's one thing that most people don't do, is do monthly communication with their investors who are in the deal. Usually you'll hear that it's a quarterly email or report, but we send a monthly email out outlining the following things: the occupancy and the pre-leased occupancy, how many units we've renovated to date, if we're achieving our projections on the renovated rent premiums, any capital expenditure projects that we're underway or have been completed, and any miscellaneous things that are going on with the market, like a headquarters just got moved to our area, or what our school district is building a new middle school, something like that. And we have that monthly report, and that allows us to stay close to investors. And more importantly, it allows the investors to have a peace of mind that we're on top of things, and their investment is, they're aware of how the investment's going.
Yeah, right. A lot can change in 3 months. So if I was an investor, I would appreciate more updates than less. So I think that's good. All right, Joe. So you've built a wildly successful real estate portfolio. You've grown very quickly. You've brought on partners. What are your future goals, and what's the future look like for you and your company?
I'd say that the goal is to have $1 billion assets under management in 6 years. That's $1 billion by my 40th birthday. I'm 34 years old right now, and that's the goal. Right now we have 130 million, and it will not take as long to get to 130 million, or it won't take as long to get to 260 million as it did to get to 130. So I'm confident that we'll reach our goal of $1 billion by 6 years from now. And it's, for me, it's, I drive a Toyota Corolla, like 2013 style. So it's not about the flashy nature of money. It's about the component, what I can do with it, and the value that we create in this world as a result of it. I mean, when I say $1 billion of apartment communities, well, when we reach that, we will have greatly influenced a lot of people's lives, from our investors who are making a very good return on their investment, to the property management group and their family members, to the contractors who are renovating the apartments, to the staff at the apartment communities, we're employing them, to the local community where we're bringing in quality residents and are enhancing the community through different projects that we're doing through community service in that area, and then also the residents who are living there, giving them a quality apartment to live in. So it's I used the $1 billion mark as a North Star, but for me, it's not about the money. Right now I have whatever money I need to do whatever I need to do. So it's more about the value that will be created and the ripple effect after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it well with the ripple effect. It's not just about accumulating all this wealth, but rather what your success is kind of say for you and can do for others. So it's fantastic. Now, you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but what are your reasons why? And by that I mean, why are you doing what you're doing? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What drives you?
Well, I think it's being the best version of me. I mean, quite frankly, on my gravestone, I wanted to say something to the effect of the people who he came across were better off because they came across them. That's really it. Something that simple. I have a vision board that is printed. I don't know. I'm looking at it on my wall. It's 4 feet long and 4 feet tall. I printed it off of Vistaprint. It's like $30-$40, and it's just a gigantic poster on my wall. And on it says, "The secret to living is giving." And I know that the more I give, the more that everyone benefits, myself included. So that's my approach. And what drives me is it's doing as much as I can to give, because I know the more I give, the more it'll be reciprocated.
Absolutely. I believe you and I both share a soft spot in our heart for junior achievement. I know you're very involved there in Cincinnati with it. It's great that you're giving back to the community and thinking about your actions beyond just yourself. So I really commend you for that, and it's a very honorable thing to look up to. So you inspire me, and I'm sure many people out there with those kinds of actions.
Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's nice to talk to kindred souls.
Yeah, great. All right, Joe, so to wrap this up, we've got a lightning round. Just going to hit you with several questions and just shoot from the hip. So you ready?
Let's roll.
Okay. So what advice could you give to someone starting out who's looking to bring on that first partner?
You'll want, before you bring on a partner, you need to know what the business needs that you're in. Once you know what the business needs, then you identify what you're good at within the business. And then you identify what you're not as good at or what you don't enjoy, which will probably go hand in hand.
Right.
And then you bring on someone who does enjoy that and is good at that. And that's the high level 3-step process. And then there's a lot within it. You just got to make sure you two get along well. For me, one of the most important things is that I can communicate with my business partner at any point in time. I can call, he picks up, text, responds. And so you need to know what's important to you from a business partnership just to make things work and make sure they have those qualities.
Great. What was your biggest hurdle getting started in real estate investing, and how did you overcome it?
I didn't have money, and I overcame it by saving for about 3 years before I bought my first single-family house, even though I was wanting to buy a single-family house for 3 years.
Great. If you were starting over with no education or capital, how would you begin investing in real estate?
No education or capital. Well, I wouldn't invest in real estate if I had no education or capital. I would start a meetup locally, and I would bring in real estate investors who have experience. They would speak to the group, and simply by coordinating efforts with the group, I would then get access to deals and money-making opportunities, and then I'd figure out what makes the most sense for me based on my skill set and the opportunity in the market.
Great. Good, actionable content. Can you share a personal habit that contributes to your success? I know you mentioned you have a vision board, maybe something along those lines.
Yeah, I'd say 2 things come to mind. One is that I have wheatgrass, a scoop of wheatgrass and a liter of water every single morning I wake up without fail. That helps alkalize my body. A good book to read is pH Miracle on that. And then one other habit is, I'm very consistent with things that I've identified that work. I mean, my podcast is the world's longest running daily real estate investing podcast. No one else in the entire world has done a daily podcast on real estate investing longer than I have, over 1,000 days that I've produced an episode. This is every single day, 7 days a week. And that's a habit that most people wouldn't do, but I do, and I've stuck to it, and it's proved to be, really valuable.
Yeah, what an accolade, Joe. And that's the best real estate investing advice ever by Joe Fairless. So we'll put that link in the show notes. All right, Joe, so wrapping up, where can our guest find more about you?
Well, for everyone interested in multifamily syndication, so raising money and buying apartments, then you can go to multifamilysyndication.com, also apartmentsyndication.com, whichever one sends you to the same place. And if for every listener who is listening and wants to get into apartment investing, I have a free resources guide for you. You can simply email info at joefairless.com. That's info at joefairless.com. You'll get a guide that lists out a bunch of resources, from websites to books to podcasts to YouTube channels on apartment investing and market research, all sorts of good stuff. So info at joefairless.com. Ask for the resources guide, and Samantha on my team will get that to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. All right, Joe. Well, that wraps up everything today. We certainly appreciate your time, and thank you for having on our show.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. All right, that wraps up our episode today with Joe. Joe is a great guy and extremely knowledgeable when it comes to real estate investing. Joe has experienced success in his investing career due not only to his deep knowledge, but as he also tells us, his team and partnerships. Joe shared a lot of great advice and insight to how he got started in his investing journey. I hope you're receiving value from this show. If you like what you've heard so far, I invite you to let me know by leaving a rating and review. Please subscribe to the show to be notified of future episodes. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me at www.jacobayers.com or email me at info@jacobayers.com. Until next time, signing off, I'm your host, Jacob Ayers.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, providing you actionable content to build your real estate empire. Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for personal advice. The opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have a potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom, LLC, exclusively.